Great morning, Hope Church. I hope that you guys have had a great week, and I hope that this week is going to be great as well. If you're new to Hope Church Online, welcome. We hope that we get to meet you someday. We hope that you get to walk in the doors here, but we don't know when that's going to be necessarily. We are on week 7 of meeting online only, and it's been fun. It's been fun, but I'll tell you this, I'm so ready to get through this storm. I'm so ready to move forward to a new season of meeting. And here's what I've been praying for, that during this season, that God would give you a renewed passion for the next season. That God would give us a renewed passion. He would give us everything we need to get to the next season and to thrive in the next season. And so I'm excited about what's to come for our church. So I want to give you a rundown on what service holds for us today. So after the message, we're going to give an opportunity to give tithe, and today is Mission Sunday. So we're going to get to hear about our missions project of the month. And let me tell you guys, you are going to want to be a part of this. It's going to be awesome. Man, I'm excited to bring a new message and a new promise to you today. Our message today is titled, God in the Storm. God in the Storm. I normally start out by asking you a question or kind of talking about a story, but or asking you a question like this. Have you ever been in a storm? But unless you were born yesterday, that would be a dumb question to ask, because I'm sure that you've been in a storm before. I'm sure you've heard pastors that have said things like this. You're either coming out of a storm, or you're in the middle of a storm, or a storm is right around the corner. In other words, life can be really difficult. And that's not encouraging. I don't expect a lot of amens on there, but it's a really true statement. It seems like when you're either coming out of difficult times, or you're in the middle of difficult times, or difficult times are around the corner. Why? Because we live in a fallen world, and it's a painful world as well. Storms come. In just the 28 short years of my life that I've lived, I've either experienced or saw on the news or have known someone that's been in storms of many kind. And we had a storm here in Phillips County on Easter, on the night of Easter, and it was not a long storm. It maybe lasted 20, 30 minutes, but it did some damage. 80% of the homes here were without power. There were several homes, several people that had trees in their yards, and they had trees that fell on homes and on cars. And some homes were without running water for a couple of days. Some, like I say, it was a small storm. It was a short storm, but it did a lot of damage. Our Jonesboro campus experienced a Category 3 tornado a few weeks ago, a few weeks before our storm. That had it left 22 people injured and 2 hospitalized. There's a lot of damage, a lot of pictures that I saw of just a ton of damage. Our Valonia campus has experienced several storms and tornadoes within a short amount of years, and they've helped their community rebuild each time. It's been awesome stories to see how God has used that as an opportunity for them to show Jesus, to be Jesus to their community. My dad's side of the family, they live in New Orleans, and they experienced Hurricane Katrina. One of the most devastating storms that we've ever seen, I'm sure. And those storms are serious, and they do damage, and they hurt a lot of people. What's so funny to me about hurricanes is that they name hurricanes these killer storms after people. Well, I looked it up one time because I was so curious about the history. In 1954, meteorologists started naming storms after their wives and their girlfriends. Now, how stupid is that? How dumb do you have to be to do that? It's like I come home to Michaela and I'm like, hey, babe, so there's this Category 5 storm, and it's going to hurt a lot of people, and it's going to cause a lot of damage. It really reminded me of you the other, it reminded, so I'm just going to call it Hurricane Michaela. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. And it's crazy, but some of us are in a storm right now that we might be tempted to name. Some of us are in a storm right now that we might be tempted to name. And, I just wish that I wasn't in storm divorce, or I just wish that I wasn't in this financial storm, or I wish I could get out of this storm of depression. And sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of real pain, and we just want the storm to go away. And it's not necessarily a physical storm with rain and wind and different things like that, but it's a storm of life. It's a storm of life, and life storms can be caused by a few things. A lot of times we tend to blame storms on the devil. I think we have to be careful to give him all the credit. Sometimes the devil didn't do it. It's just our dumb decisions. It wasn't the devil that caused this storm. You just spent too much money, or you just mouthed off to your spouse or to your parents, or you weren't considerate. You were procrastinating during a project. It wasn't that the devil didn't get your homework done. It was that you spent all night playing video games, drinking Mountain Dew, doing all these things. And you know what I'm saying? It wasn't the devil that got you into the relationship that you were in, that everybody told you not to be in. Your mom told you not to be in it. Your best friend told you not to do it. Your pastor told you not to do it. You opened up a fortune cookie that told you not to do it. But you dated them anyway. Why? Because they have potential. Because they've got potential. Yeah, they got potential to ruin your life. That's what they have potential to do. And sometimes we get into a storm because of our decisions. But I think we think that if we're in a storm, that we can blame it on somebody else. It's much easier for God to help me to get out of a storm that I blame somebody else on than for me to get out of a storm that I stepped into willingly. And we do have storms that aren't caused by us, that aren't made by our decisions in life. It's not a storm that we decided to get in. It's a storm that they decided to cause us to walk through. And how many of you guys had that friend that always got you into some mess every weekend? Or how many of you guys were that friend that got other friends into some mess? Maybe you're in a storm because your parents are divorced. Or maybe you're in a storm because your company made a bad decision, or you trusted someone and they didn't keep their word. Here's the question. Here's a question for you here. For not the question, but a question. Does God send you into storms? Does God send storms to you? I don't necessarily know if God causes storms or if he's the one that sends them. I don't know if that's a safe place to think, or a process to think on necessarily, but I do know that God allows us to go through storms. Jesus and the disciples went through storms, and we'll talk about some of those later on. But here's the thing: maybe God is sending you through storms not to harm you, but to help you. Not to make you feel scared, but to grow you. And whatever type of storm you're in, or whatever caused the storm, I think the main question is here. What do you do when you're in the middle of a storm? Or what should you do when you're in the middle of a storm? Naturally, I think we tend to lean one or two ways when it comes to God. We either blame God for the storm, we blame Him because we're in that storm, or we ask where is God while we're in the storm. So God is either the reason why, or He's not anywhere to be found while we're in a storm. And I want to bring you a promise today that will help you get through that thought process. This promise answers where and who and what God is in a storm. Are you ready? It's Psalms 56, verse 1. It says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. God is our refuge and strength, and a very present help in trouble. Who and where and what is God in the storm. He's our strength. He's our refuge. He's our very present help. And scholars aren't entirely sure the context of this psalm, but most agree it was written during severe trouble. See, whatever the trouble was, the message is this: God is stronger than any trouble that you face. God is stronger than any trouble that you can face. Can we just stop right there and celebrate that simple but powerful fact? Put some fire emojis in there. Put some praise hand emojis, some clapping hand emojis in the chat right now. God is stronger than anything that you're stressing over right now. God is more massive than any mountain that you face. God is more powerful than any problem that you have. You may have big worries, but I came today to tell you that our God is bigger. Our God is bigger. If you're in a storm today, I want you to know that you can trust God in your storm. That you can trust Him when life throws you an unexpected storm. You can be sure of one thing: God's faithfulness. See, that's the focus of this promise for this week, found in Psalms 56. And it has three different aspects of things that I want to break down today. It says God is our refuge, God is our strength, and God is our ever-present help in trouble. And the first thing it says here is that He's our refuge. See, that's not a word that we use every day. Refuge is defined as a safe place or shelter from pursuit, from danger, or from trouble. Everybody runs somewhere from pursuit, things that are chasing them, from danger, and from trouble. It's our natural instinct when we're in trouble, when we're in danger, when we're in pursuit. What's your natural refuge? Well, let me ask you like this. Where do you go or where do you run when you're in trouble? Now, the Sunday school answer is for you to say Jesus. Everybody would say Jesus, but here's the thing. You're not in church today. You're not in the building. No one can see your facial expression, so you don't have to put your Sunday best on, your smile on. I'm sure you're in your pajamas, so we can just get real, okay? I want you to answer that question for yourself. Answer it. Say, where do I go whenever trouble comes? Where do I go whenever trouble comes? Has it been the things that help you avoid facing your troubles? I want to encourage you with this. When you run from your troubles, you are not helping to fix them, because God can't fix what you refuse to face. God can't help you with things that you refuse to hide or put back. And it was so what is it? What's the thing that you go to, that you run to? Is it people? Is it your parents? Is it your spouse? Is it overspending? Is it just overindulging in food, or is it drinking or whatever? When you are distressed, we all have a natural tendency to run somewhere and cover up. Animals do this. And, here's the thing. Rabbits, they run to their complex tunnel system. They have multiple entrances, and it allows them to exit quickly. And they're as large as tennis courts, and it's 10 feet deep in surface. Beavers, they run to their dams. The shelter is made of sticks and mud, or to protect them from their predators. And they even build an underwater backdoor instant access. Meerkats, they hide in tunnels, and their tunnels have about 15 entrances and exit holes that they can reach, and they're up to 6.5 feet deep. They have several tunnels in rotation that they have in order to confuse the predators. Clownfish, they find refuge in these underwater plants, which have stingers that are harmful or even lethal to other fish. There are these birds called sociable weavers. They're a group of birds that when they're in danger, they have this giant nest that's within a nest. And we all know where turtles go to hide from trouble. Animals find safety when they're hidden in the shadows of their covering. And when threatened, they run to their refuge. And when you're threatened or when you're distressed, you can run to God, your refuge. When you feel fear, anxiety, hopelessness, shame, or anything else, you can run to him for safety, for security, and for peace. You know, in the last month, we've learned what it means to be sheltered in place. It means to stay in one place so that danger can't get to you. So in this case, it's the virus. The closer you are to the virus, the higher likelihood you are to get infected. So shelter in place means to hide from the virus, to keep your distance. That's why we're doing what we call social distancing. And I don't really like that term that much. I would prefer us to say physical distancing. Social distancing is when you're isolated from everybody, and that's the last thing we need, is to be isolated. But here's the thing. To shelter in place is to hide from the virus, to keep your distance. That's not what David is saying whenever he's talking about it to the followers of God. He says to shelter in place. Instead, he's saying to trust in him. In him means to be surrounded by him. So distance from an enemy doesn't create safety. It's the presence of God that does that. Your shelter is in him, so that means he's your shield. That means he's your defense. That means he's your protection. That means he's your wall. He's your safety. You can find safety in him. I read an article this week about a wealthy person fleeing underground to his bunker in New Zealand to shelter in place. They're trying to hide themselves and shelter in place. They trust in their money, and they've made, and they shelter in what they've built. They are trying to protect themselves with their own strategy. I think sometimes we get there. When you shelter in God, he's the one who keeps you safe. His shelter is in him. Your shelter should be in him and not in a place, not in a person, not in a thing. A.C. Dixon says this: in Jesus Christ on the cross, there is a refuge, there is safety, there is a shelter. All the power of sin upon our track cannot reach us when we have taken shelter under the cross that atones for our sin. Man, that's just some good news right there. If you have refuge and safety under his covering, and if you don't know Jesus, you can put your faith in him today. We're gonna give an opportunity for that at the end of this, and you can find a safe place of refuge. The second thing is that God is our strength. Facing storms of life often leave us weak and depleted. You feel like giving up, and you feel like staying home, hiding in your bed, hiding from the world. But here's the thing: you need to get up and go and get going, because you're not doing it in your strength. You're doing it in his strength. But when you're weak, you run to God, and he's your strength. He gives you strength. So don't let self-righteous people convince you that every problem is a result of sin. Confessing your problems is not a sign of weakness. It's opening the door to the strength of God to show up in your life. I love this. Every miracle begins with a problem. Every miracle begins with, when you think about that, that's just like a big revelation to me. Every miracle begins with a problem. Your heartache invites his comfort. Your worry makes way for his peace. Your sickness welcomes his healing. Your confusion and your frustration, it invites his guidance into your life. Your sin, your failure, your shortcomings cause God to extend his forgiveness and his mercy and his grace. God gives us strength to get through because he still has a purpose for us. There's this song called My Testimony by Elevation Worship that I just love. And there's a part in the song where he says, if I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. Come on. How many of you guys believe that for your life? Come on, put it in the chat right now. The best is yet to come. Tell somebody. Just encourage everybody on this live stream right now. The best is yet to come. I believe it. Because here's the thing. You can't be done yet, because God is going to use you to help others through their storm. Your story isn't just going to be that you survived an unfaithful marriage. No, it's not going to be that. It's going to be that you helped someone else survive through their unfaithful marriage. Your story isn't going to be, I just survived financial debt. You're going to help somebody else survive it too. Your story isn't going to be that you just helped survive addiction, but that you're going to help set the captives free from the very same thing that you were held by. God is going to give you strength. I love that, man. I love that he's going to give me strength. He's my strength. And the last part is my favorite. God is an ever-present help in trouble. Man, that's so good. You know, God has been with many people in storms over time. It's all over the Bible. God told Noah to build an ark, and he gave his wisdom to him to do it. And why? Why did he do that? Because the storm was coming. God was with Jonah in the storm. Now, Jonah was running from God when God calling him to go somewhere but because he got caught in the storm, he jumped out of a boat, and he was that he was in to stop the storm, and then he was swallowed up by a fish to protected him through the storm. That protected him until he got to where he needed to go. And the Bible is really weird, but it's also really cool at the same time. That story may not make sense to you, but I promise it's a cool story. And you know, Jesus was in a storm with the disciples. He was in two storms with them, actually. One where he was walking on water, and that's just a whole nother message right there. That Jesus walks over the stuff that we drowned in. That would take me a whole nother 30 minutes to preach on right there. But the other storm, Jesus was asleep. It was crazy. I mean, they believe this storm was radical enough, was big enough, severe enough to kill the disciples, and Jesus is just back there snoring it up. You know what I mean? Like, he's just sleeping. And they said to they said to the Lord, "Do you even care? Do you even care that we're in this storm?" And then he got up, he wiped the sleep out of his eyes, and he just said, "Peace," to the storm, and it stopped. Are you seeing that God helps us through the storms? Are you seeing that in here? The last one I'll tell you about is my favorite. Is Paul in the storm, Acts chapter 27, verse 21 through 23. Paul's in a storm, and it's super crazy. So crazy that people started throwing their stuff off the boat because they thought that they were going to die. They had been in a storm for days. They had ran out of food. They couldn't tell what time it was. They couldn't tell if it was day or night. The skies were so black and just raining that it was a crazy storm. It's amazing to see the similarity to that in a life storm, because you could be at that place where you just feel like you can't tell what time of day it is, and you think that you're gonna die from it, and so that you just throw everything off. I mean, there's just so many similarities there. And Paul speaks up to encourage the men. He says this, verse 21. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Now, come on, Paul. This is not the time for you to say, 'I told you so,' okay? This isn't that thing. But he says this, 'Then you would have spared yourself this damage and loss. But I urge you to keep your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed.'" Now, that's not encouraging either, okay? Because this is the thing I'm standing in. And if you can't swim, him telling me the ship is going to be destroyed, that's not good either. And here's the last thing he says that really encourages me is last night an angel of God, to whom I belong and whom I serve, stood beside me. Wow. And said, "Don't be afraid, Paul." That's what Psalm says in the next verse, actually. After he talks about how he's our refuge, our strength, and our ever-present help, it says, therefore means because. So because of all of that, I will not be afraid. Paul, why should you be afraid? Why shouldn't we be afraid of this? Could it be that Paul was remembering the 46th Psalm? Paul was saying that Paul was saying to not be afraid because God, come on. This time what we're going to do is we're going to read the whole entire verse, okay? We're going to read not the whole entire verse, the whole entire chapter. It says, God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in trouble.
Therefore we will not fear though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea.
The waters of the sea may roar and foam, the mountains may shake when the water rise.
There is a city whose streams make glad, the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells.
God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns.
The nations are in chaos, and their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders, and the earth melts.
The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress.
Come see the works of the Lord who brings devastation to the earth.
He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire.
Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress.
So come on, even if we lose the boat, my faith wasn't in the boat. It's in the one who spoke the trees into existence that made the wood for the boat. He's my refuge. So even though we haven't eaten in days, my faith wasn't in the food. My faith was in the one who created the food that we eat over a span of 3 days. He's my strength. And last night, an angel stood next to me, an angel of God to whom I belong to. He's my help in trouble. That's just so cool to me. An angel stood next to God. I don't know. I've never actually seen an angel. Maybe an angel's up here with me right now, like high five angel. I don't know. Maybe he's up here with me. But that's just so cool to me that an angel was in Paul's presence. That God was there, not to get rid of the storm, but he was there in the middle of the storm. And I know for so many of us, we're like, well, why won't God just take the storm away? Why won't he just take it away? That would be a much more logical thing for me. That would be more of what I would think a God should do, is take the storm away. And maybe right now, because he hadn't taken the storm away, you're doubting God. But I want to encourage you with this. Never let the presence of a storm make you doubt the presence of God. Never let the presence of a storm make you doubt the presence of God. Yeah, there's going to be big storms that come your way. You're always either going to be in the middle of it, there's going to be one coming around the corner, or you're just going to be getting out of one. And you got to understand this, that even if you're still in the storm, real peace isn't found in the absence of a storm, but it's found in the presence of God. So that's why you find refuge in him. That's why you go to him for strength. That's why he's an ever-present help in the time of trouble. I know right now maybe some of you guys are hearing you say, Pastor Qway, my situation just doesn't look like God is here. But I want to encourage you that your faith isn't about what you see, it's about what he said. If that's you today and you say, well, Pastor Qway, I don't really feel God's presence. I don't really have a relationship with him. I want to encourage you today that, like I said earlier, you can put your faith and your trust in him. You can put your faith and your trust in him today, right now. If that's you and you say today, I want to start a relationship with that kind of God. I want to start a relationship with the one that can help me in the middle of my storms. I want to pray with you. I want to pray with you, and I want to believe that God is going to do something great in your life. Let's pray. Father, we thank you. We ask you to help us with our sinful nature. God, help us to turn from the old things. And right now, today, in this moment, start a relationship with you that will bring healing from my past, but hope for my future. We thank you, Jesus. We are a follower of you. We're putting our faith in you. We're believing in you, leaning not on our own understanding, but trusting and acknowledging all your ways. God, I thank you for those people that are praying some version of that prayer right now. I pray that you would bless them. I pray that you would show them that you are Emmanuel, God with us. We thank you in Jesus' name. Everybody said, hey, would you just celebrate with those that are helping, that are coming to God in the middle of their storm, that are here and
pushed into the sea. He will shield us, love us steadfastly. Be still and know that He is God. He'll be exalted in the nations, exalted in the earth. That He is God. He'll be exalted in the nations, exalted in the earth, Lord of hosts with us. Be still and know that He is God. He'll be exalted in the nations, exalted in the earth, Lord of hosts. things of earth soon will fade away. Jesus, King of Kings, will still